What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Sit Down with DT. Sit Down with DT is a podcast about many guests' highs and their lows in their life, also about how they overcame it and continue to push forward. Today, we got a man of many traits. We got a devoted husband, father, pastor, counselor, and high school coach. Somebody that I've got to know over the years. Some people might know him as Coach Walker. Some people might know him as Mr. Walker. Welcome into the podcast, Mr. Justin Walker.
Good morning, DT. It's great to be here.
Yes,
Great
sir.
to be here.
Yes, sir. Is there
Honored you to ask.
Yes, sir. Most definitely. Is there anything else that you would like to add on top of what I've introduced you as so far?
Yeah, I mean, one thing, I mean, several things. So just a young, prodigal son. I was born in Mayfield, Kentucky. If you're from the state or the surrounding areas, you think of Mayfield, Kentucky, really two things will come to mind. Would be one is the tornado from a few years ago in high school football. And I spent most of my life, or the young part of my life, or Mayfield, being a Mayfield Cardinal football player is all I wanted to do with my life. My life was completely and totally built around that, and built around football for a long time until just some certain events that happened in my life, which we can get into, where God just showed Himself to be real to me, and slowly became the center of my life and direction. And so now, but the titles that you listed at the beginning, all of those, by the grace of God, are just kind of His will and the way that He's been a vessel to use me and my spiritual gifts. He's done so many great things for me, and been there through all of those peaks and valleys along the way.
Right.
And so it's probably where I am today.
Yes, sir. So, as you know, many of the listeners know how the podcast goes. I go through a series of questions, man, and I just kind of pick your brain, allow you to express yourself in my space. What do you feel like has been the highest moments of your life?
The highest moments of my life. Well, I would say, the obvious ones that I think most married people with children would give you. Marrying my wife of now 21. No, I hope she doesn't listen to this. 17 years. The birth of my two children.
Right.
They're baptizing them, like a lot of honor. People of the Christian faith. I think a big moment for them is when their children accept Jesus and they're baptized. But being their pastor as well, I got the rare honor to be able to baptize my own children. That was amazing. Winning a state championship as a football player in 1993 was a definite highlight. And as a coach, and then this one's going to sound odd, but we one year, I think it was 2010, I was coaching at Hancock County High School, and that football team had not won a game all year. And coming from a winning tradition, I would see a team win a game that hadn't won all year, and they would celebrate like it was a Super Bowl. You kind of laugh at it, but when you were a part of it, it was one of the years I enjoyed in coaching the most. And we won the last game of the season against Breckinridge County, and I don't remember being more excited for a group of kids after a win than that year. And that definitely sticks out as a memory, as an exciting time in my life.
Right. And I can kind of also feel you on that, where it's like you come from a tradition where it's state championships, you're trying to win, you get frustrated with losses. I kind of feel you on that, just from coming out of high school from OHS, where it's a tradition of excellence. They demand excellence. They're going
That's right.
Christian, man. And I remember we're there, and it's like my first 2 or 3 years, it's like we can't get over the hump. You can't get over 3 wins. And then that COVID year, that spring season, we finally, cracked the code and went 6-2, man. But yeah, it can definitely be, frustrating. But when you get that one positive thing, man, it's like, yeah, this is what it's all about along, man. So I definitely feel that.
Yeah, just that feeling that, being a part of something that other people just can't understand unless they've been there,
Right.
Getting that, and seeing kids win. I've found that I love coaching more than I did playing. and I never thought that would be the case.
Really?
Never thought that would be the case. Yeah, yeah. It's strange, but it really coaching has taught me to find joy in helping other people find joy. You know, because a big part of my life is about finding my own pleasure, finding my own joy. You know, doing my own will. But then once that gets in your blood, once you see other people, you help other people have success and see joy, especially for young people. It gets in your blood, man. That's hard to let go of.
Right,
Keeps you going.
right. And
Keeps
so,
you going through the valleys.
yes, sir. And so, with you being from Mayfield, I have to ask you this.
Yeah.
Legendary Owensboro High School coach, man. Did you know Coach Prince?
I didn't know. So let's see. I'm not sure when Coach Prince plays. I don't know him extremely well personally. I've met him a few times, but he is certainly a legend. My dad would know him a lot better.
Right.
Now, Coach Prince, was he on the, I'm trying to think. My dad played like 75, 76, which was the 2 years before Mayfield won their back-to-back titles,
Mm-hmm.
their first two. And then, but I can't remember who he was around then or if he was 85, 86.
Yeah, I'm definitely not positive.
Yeah.
I definitely. I was a little kid, whenever he was going through
Yeah.
Owensboro. So
Coach
I,
Fallon told me that there's a bunch of debates. He used to, people would debate like which Mayfield team was the greatest, and he had one of those teams. I think the '78 team.
yeah, I was
That he
gonna
would
say, man.
getting.
I know he was an older guy for sure because
Yeah,
by the
big
time I
guy.
hit high school, man, how I remember my cousins and them telling me is he used to just sit on a yoga ball at practice. So I
Yeah.
definitely don't know exactly like what team he played on or anything like that. I figured that y'all probably crossed paths at some point in time with both of you guys being from Mayfield and playing there
Yeah,
like that.
we had a JV game when I was in Hancock County. We had a JV game at Owensboro, and he was there, and I introduced myself to him then, and you got to know him a little bit. So, but he was definitely, the Mayfield football lore. All the legendary players.
Right.
With Jeff Flood and Coach Prince, Marcus Moss, and I mean, I just could go on and on and on. All the guys that were my heroes growing up.
Right. Guys that you went and seen play in person and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I feel it. I feel it. And
Huge memories. I remember. So we played when I was too young enough to understand. We played our high school team played Fort Knox, and we went all the way to Fort Knox to the game, and they had the Philadelphia Eagle uniforms, right? They used, which happens a lot. The high schools mimic the colleges and pro teams.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought we were playing the Philadelphia Eagles. And I remember being so upset and thinking it was not fair that we had to play the Philadelphia Eagles. But then I started to brag a little bit that we almost beat them. Come to find out that was not a true story that I was parading around.
I mean, it's weird though, because I remember when I was a kid and I'll go and watch, some high schools like up here, because I'm from Northern Kentucky, just like I'm from
Right.
as well. And we had schools with like the G of the Green Bay Packers. I want to say Grant County or somebody like that, or one of the schools. They had like a G, like the Green Bay Packers. I'm like, man, I don't remember the Green Bay Packers being, red and black. I don't I don't remember that.
Yeah.
So it used to throw me off for sure. It used to throw me off.
That was a lot more fun. Some of those things that we imagined as kids, it was a lot more fun being in that mind state sometimes than dealing with the actual realities, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah, most definitely. I tell people all the time, when you got to play football as a, kid at ODCYFL or, for me, NKYFL, and it's just, you're trying to be like your favorite player, that's easy. That's easy. That's pretty free roam. You're trying to mimic, your favorite moves. I was a lineman trying to do, Reggie Bush juke moves. So, of course, I never got to carry the ball past Pop Warner. I used to be a running back. Used to way back in the day. It's not old saying that, but you get to do stuff like that.
The honor of being
right. So it's like, now you don't get that. It's you're a lineman, focus on your craft, perfect your technique, and it helps along the way.
I learned to love being an offensive lineman. I guess everybody that's played offensive line has gone through that dream crushing revelation that you're not going to carry the ball. Either you realize that you can't, that there's somebody that's better at it, or you're still convinced that you can do it better than anybody else, but you're going to play football, and so you just do it.
Right.
That's one of the things that I hope to do. That I really try hard to do is put high value and a lot of honor into playing the position, to try to dress that up and make that a position that people want to play. I remember when I was young, Desmond Howard was a big, like when I was, I don't know, 8th, 9th grade, Desmond Howard was doing his thing, won the Heisman Trophy, and he had all those highlight catches where he would stretch out into the back corner of the end zone and catch a ball. Yeah, and I can't remember how many hours we spent in my backyard, me and my friend, overthrowing each other on purpose to try to make that diving catch in the end zone, just over and over again. I'd love to see some video on that, because what it looked like in my mind, the expectation versus reality,
right.
it was probably pretty hilarious to watch. But I thought I was probably jumping 15 yards and laying out. In my mind, it looked beautiful, but I can't imagine what it looked like for a 228-pound chubby kid.
Because
diving out for a Nerf football.
Man, the Nerf football, yeah, that's the classic, man. The classic of childhood. Now I will say, even with me playing O-line, I've personally caught one pass. Now,
oh wow,
I mean, my last stop, KCU, very last game I've ever played there. We're going out a senior day with a bang. Of course, I'm not a senior, but they call like a little trick play, throw it back to me. On the field, I thought I, jumped like 30 feet in the air, was moving like on a 4.95, 40 or 4.5 40. Went back and watched the tape, man. That's some of the slowest stuff I've ever seen in my life. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna lie to you, but yeah, it's definitely dope. And you said something that actually, caught my attention when you said, you're trying to kind of bring the attention back to O-line play and make it something very enjoyable. And for me, now I'm gonna ask you this question as well. But
sure.
For me, the person that kind of made me love O-line was, the person before you, Coach Houston. I kind of I tell people all the time, and I was kind of done with football. I was going to, really do track and field, and that's somebody that, came up and inspired me, and kind of was like, look, I need you. You're a great player. I need you to play for me, and that's somebody that made me fall in love with the game, is what I tell people. So like for you, and it could be, in your coaching career, in your playing career, who's somebody that, really made you fall in love with football?
There were a couple of steps along the way, but I would say, my Pee Wee coach, Roger Creason. I guess I have to back up to say, like, I nobody really had to do that for me, really. But Roger Creason was a huge influence on me as my Pee Wee football coach, and then my head football coach in high school, the legendary Paul Leahy, who passed 4 or 5 years back. He was just very inspirational. A story I love to tell about him, because if from the stands, the way you view football coaches from when you're in their presence is so different. And Coach Leahy he was old school. I mean, he would jump. I mean, he would get on you now. I mean, he'd get in your face and he'd yell at you like a lot of our coaches would. So going into high school, you're very intimidated about being around him. And he would get on you, but he had this way. I don't. Some coaches just have it. He had this way that you knew that he cared about you, even though he didn't say it to you. He would just kind of show you. But I remember my senior year after football was over, I had a real low spot in my life, and my grades had slipped pretty bad. And he called me in the office, and I was terrified, man. I was like, "This is gonna be. He's gonna burn my eyebrows off, right? He's just gonna let me have it." And he just sat down and like very sincerely is like, "Hey, this is not who you are. I'm really concerned about this. Like, I know you can do better," and was really encouraging. And in that moment, it kind of came out. You could see how much that he really cared. See how much he really cared about me. And I wanted to do, when I was on the field playing for him, I just wanted to do the best I could for him. And so it's a very unique situation. So I would definitely want to honor the late great Coach Leahy. Love you, Coach. He was definitely huge. And then Coach Joe Morris, who's the head coach there now, he was my line coach, much in the same. We were in. I was in Mayfield with my daughter, and went back just went back by to visit, and it's just like you never left. You know, you just feel like one of the family. And so a lot of things, like if you've read Tony Franklin's got a lot to say about the football program and the camaraderie there. And I'm here to verify if you ever read or listen to any of his stuff, what he says about Mayfield football is about accurate of a description as you can find. Pretty special place.
And they call Tony Franklin? They call him the father of the what was it? The air raid or
spread the air raid?
Spread,
Yeah, he was in with Hal Mummy and Mike Leach, and they were. I'm not sure exactly what they call him, but he has the Tony Franklin system.
Mm-hmm.
I know that they ran it at Catholic. He was there at Catholic for a while and put it in. And they kind of put it on the map around here when he installed it there.
Mm-hmm. Around Western Kentucky.
Yeah.
Oh, is that somebody, the two people that you named, are those people that you try to model like you're coaching around them? Like, do you try to like replicate?
It was. Yeah, I think anybody when they first get into coaching, you just kind of coach how you were coached.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I first started coaching, talk about a low point in life, I think I was an effective coach because I was passionate and I had some good knowledge about the game. But I just think you got people to do what they need to do, just to yell and scream at them until you're intimidated into doing it. And so it took a while for me to go into who I am as a coach, just going to clinics, and my faith informs a big part of that too. Just being around other coaches with other coaching styles and just learning how to be real and be myself. Because you know how it is as young people, you can kind of, when somebody's being fake and not being who they were. Now, being angry was definitely a part of who I was, just because of the way I was living my life. I was just in a low, miserable place and angry a lot, and would hold it in around my family, but just was using that in an improper way a lot of times just to unleash some anger. And I don't think I was abusive as a coach, but there are definitely some things I'd love to do over.
Right. And you're kind of building off of my next question, which is here on the podcast, man. I love when people tell their stories. I definitely love when they tell their high points, and I also feel like the low points are needed for somebody that can hear it.
Yeah, man.
As a learning lesson, or something that they may have been struggling with, and hearing somebody else go through it may help them, find a better way to, source an outlet. So for you, what do you think, like some of the real lowest moments of your life, or something that you really struggled with going through your life? Nobody's perfect. We've all made mistakes.
Oh,
I'm going to give you, your space. The floor is
yeah.
yours.
Well, since we're on the topic of coaching, and and working with young people, I definitely want to tell one. It was a low point for me. I've got plenty of them. I mean, my walk with Jesus is full, and I think for anybody, if you're walking strong with Him, it's a life of peaks and valleys. But the idea is that the next mountaintop is higher than the one before it, and the next valley is not as low as the one before.
Right.
Even though it might actually be lower to the onlookers. It might seem like a worse situation to withstand, and with the adversity is better. But I do want to, since we're on the topic of coaching, this is a story I'd like to be heard for sure. I remember, speaking of just being angry and doing things that I'm not proud of, I remember we had a young man, we were getting beat. I can't remember who we were playing, but we were getting beat really bad. And they were rubbing it in. I mean, they were throwing the ball into the end zone up 40, 50 points. And one of our better players, I grabbed him. He was on kickoff return. And I said, hey, look, when I kick this off and somebody runs at you, try to run over you, I want you to cut it. When he runs at me full speed. And he just kind of looked at me. And I respect him this kid to this day for this, because I was an intimidating coach. And he looked at me and he said, "Coach, I don't feel comfortable doing that. I don't think I should do that." And I caught myself. At first, I was going to get on to him. I was like, "You're going to do what I tell you to do." And I don't know if it was the Holy Spirit or what, just hit me. And I realized what I'd done. And I said, "You know what? I really respect you for standing up for what's right." It's like, "I was wrong. Please don't do that." And I kind of gave him a little hug. And I think that was a transitional point in my coaching career. Now, what made that a low point was the next year we were in the same scenario, and I heard that same kid yelling at his teammates to do what I told him to do the year before. And you talk about a low moment, because then that was the moment I think that I realized, now that I'm just saying it out loud, what kind of an impact that we have on kids as coaches,
Right.
and how that can spread. Because I tried to influence him to do that, and he didn't, and I was proud of him for that. But in the next year, I saw like that idea, that toxicity that I allowed come out of my spirit and start to infect the team. And that was a huge turnaround moment for me. I read a book called Inside Out Coaching by Bart Ehrman that I would recommend any coach would read. And that was, that and just my faith in general in that moment. That was definitely a definite valley, but I'm thankful for that valley, because I learned something that helped me climb the mountain.
Right. And that's definitely something, like, I'm glad that you caught yourself on, because it's definitely something that I feel like happens more in our sport, uh,
Mm-hmm.
where it's kind of like, you target the best player, and then you send your worst player out. I mean, to go and do the tasks. I remember, man, I got to back all the way up to Pop Warner, man. But I remember
Oh yeah.
we had a quarterback, man, that was like, he's a really good quarterback. Coach from the other team kind of sent, his worst player out there to try to like twist the kid's ankle. So, I definitely understand where you're coming from on that. And, you being a man of God, and you caught yourself, in that moment, at your lowest point in that moment, it's definitely, it's big, man. So, I
Yeah.
definitely applaud you for that. Um, that is something that's just, it's great to hear that you overcame that. Um, is there anything else that you would like to build off of, or
Yeah. I mean, yeah, just to turn around from that. And I definitely had more low moments as a coach. But that building into that, as far as coaching goes, I would say, I'll share this too. I don't want to get too in depth with it, because it's really personal right now, because we're still going through it. But I have a daughter who suffers from a mental illness, and she has uh, a seizure condition that's brought on by stress and anxiety.
right? Hate to hear
They're
that.
stress-induced seizures. They're not epileptic, but so she's been really that's been affecting us really strongly here. It's definitely been a valley for our whole family, and she's currently lost her ability to speak.
Right.
And so we're in the process of learning sign language. And here's just not nearly as low of a moment as I described before, but as a realization moment as a parent that I want to share, because I think it's so important. Recently we were in Mayfield, staying at my parents' house, because it's a calming spot. It's a very not a very stressful spot, so it was a good place for her to find some peace and to help a little bit with her recovery. But she had a seizure and fell down the steps. We had to go to the hospital, and she has an app on her phone where she can type it in and it'll say what she wants to say out loud. And and we were at the hospital, and they were asking her for this information, and she was signing to them, and they didn't understand sign language. And I was getting frustrated. And I was like, "Would you please just use your phone?" Because it was an emergency situation, and we needed to get her back and get her checked out. So the next day, we go have coffee, and she's doing the same thing. She's signing to me. I can understand it. I get frustrated, and I asked her to please use her phone. And then all of a sudden, it just hit me. This is grace of God and the Holy Spirit. God is saying, "Hey, you have to listen to her now. You have to put away all your distractions, and you have to watch and give her your full attention, And as a dad, you talk about hitting like a ton of bricks. Like, how many times are we so busy that we just don't sit and listen to people? Like, we want to, we want to talk. We want to
Mhm.
wait to help people fix things. But, and now I'm thankful for those moments. Like, I want her to use sign language because I have to sit and get that time, because you never know how much of that time you're going to have with
Right.
people. Just
Right.
learning. So it was a huge lesson on just being present and learning how to listen, which can extend into counseling, which extends into being a pastor, extends into coaching. I'm a preacher. That's why I like God talk to a captive audience. And so the listening part is something that we have to learn, and that's been a great way for me to learn that, and to
Right.
try to find some mountaintops in this valley we're in.
Mhm. Y'all overcome it for sure, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Um, man, but that's something, I always tell people. I feel like we take, us as humans, we take a lot of time for granted. You know what I mean? We all know
Man.
what transpired, a few weeks back, and that definitely tore up,
Oh yeah.
yeah, and that definitely tore up our community. I'm not gonna really speak too much on it. I just know, when I found,
Yeah.
that kind of made me sit back and look, like, you never know when. Um, Another situation, I'm blessed for the opportunity that you guys have given me, with a 10-year-old kid, Aiden,
Yeah.
fighting cancer. And that's something that, my grandma fought as well. Now, she didn't beat it, but um it's something that, when I heard it, and he was like, I understand your schedule's busy, and I'm like, nah, we got to make time for that, because you never know when. You never know when, just like you're at home with your daughter. That's probably some of the best time you guys will get together. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um, It's just, I think what God's been trying to tell me, kind of like, how he's been telling you, is just understand the importance of time. You know what I mean?
Man.
Don't take time for granted. Don't take your platform and your opportunities for granted. You got an amazing platform with, being a preacher, being a coach to touch lives. I got a great platform with being a Division 1 athlete. Now, sometimes in my eyes, I think that, just me being a Division 1 athlete shouldn't give me the platform it does, but I'm blessed that it does, because I feel like it allows for things like this, this podcast, where we can kind of both open up and, give, listeners a idea of, how we're thinking, or help somebody through a problem. So I definitely feel you on that, 100%.
Oh man. Yeah. And I think what's helped strengthen us all, especially, I can imagine people go through those ways with that. Because unfortunately, suffering is just part of the human experience, and and we've all had those moments with God where we've been angry and thought, really, I've done this, and I've done all these things, but I don't know about you, but when I'm in the valley, when times are hard, is when I feel the closest to God. And that even Jesus himself, when he was on the cross, his last words were, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And so we have a Savior who understands that. Like when we are in the worst parts of our life, we're a lot of times at the very center of God's will, because we know the rest of the story, you know and so Jesus can empathize with us. And I've learned now, when I'm in the middle of adversity, to see him in everything, to find those moments like that, where he's taught me how to listen. And I'm on my knees and fastings and prayers often, as the scriptures say, just um so there's a part of me, I would definitely want her suffering to end immediately. But I don't want this closeness that I have with God right now to end ever. And I think that's the point and the goal.
Right, right. I feel you on that. So I gotta ask, so what's next for you? As far as, like, your coaching and counseling. I know we talked a little bit, before the recording.
Yeah. Well, something that's been on my heart for a long time, and maybe this is the unleashing of that. Who knows what God will do? But for probably 2 or 3 years, like faith-based counseling by nature is hard to afford.
Hmm.
A lot of cases, because pastoral counseling is not, just this separation of church and state reasons. Most of the time, is not covered by insurance. And so when I was counseling, one of the things that bothered me the most was like people just not being able to afford it. And then that mixed along with, our young athletes now struggling with like stress and performance and just life in general. And so God's had in my heart for a long time to start a donation-based Christian counseling that's kind of geared for athletes, not that you have to be an athlete to benefit from it, but it's going to definitely focus a lot on that. Just to be able to do that, I haven't named that. About coaching or kingdom coaching or something like that, kind of counseling, life coaching, on a donation basis. That way, like you can come for $1 if you need. And just trusting God with the finances of it, and being able to share His love and guidance with as many young athletes as I can.
Right. Just kind of giving somebody a space to, free their mind. I feel you on that. That's definitely big. Something I've never heard of is donation based. So,
Yeah,
that's
it may be. It might be out there, but I think what He showed me, and what we're dealing with within our family is like right now. To me,
Mhm.
I'll spend every penny in my bank account if I can, if I can get my daughter well. I've just learned to just trust God and all of that. If He needs me to be here and be present, then I'll sacrifice it all for her. And I think it's what God did as a father for us. Another thing I've learned in her silence and what she's gone through is, sometimes I think God gives us, not that we're God, we're sitting in His throne, but He gives us His perspective on things. And when I've been through plenty of trials and sufferings myself, but when your child is suffering, like my prayer many times would be, and I know this might sound a little self-centered or trying to make myself sound like a great person, but I think the parents that would listen to this would understand. Like, you would take that. I wouldn't take anybody else's suffering when I wasn't a parent.
Right.
The
Hmm.
scriptures say, for a good man, one might even dare to die. Some people might die for others, but when you have a child, you definitely will. If you're even 5% a good parent, like, you would take the suffering, you would take the death before your child. It's kind of a no-brainer. But having to watch them suffer, God has kind of given me that perspective, because I always thought, well, if Jesus was suffering, you're God, you're all knowing, like, the suffering
Hmm.
really hurt God. And I caught myself saying, oh, I love my child, I love more than He loves, which is no. I wouldn't sacrifice my child for anyone else.
Right.
I wouldn't give up my child. I wouldn't, if there's a way out of this, like Jesus prayed in the garden, if there's another way, Lord, let's do
Hmm.
that. But, if this is your will, then show me how to survive it. Show me how to get through it.
Right. And,
And so sorry, brother, go on ahead.
no, you're good. I was just gonna say, it's something I haven't got to experience yet. I don't have any kids, but I definitely
Yeah.
understand you on that.
Well, don't let that scare you from it.
Oh no,
You know,
definitely not terrified. No, I definitely need a little junior running around, or a little daughter one day. It's not the time now.
yeah,
My my grandma and my mom have a heart attack right now. So couldn't do nothing like that. Couldn't do nothing like that.
yeah.
But when the time's right, then you know.
We can't have too many offensive linemen.
Oh yeah, that's a fact. I don't know exactly if I'll run through Owensboro High School, but if I do, I definitely hope, you're probably still there, or somebody's there. Somebody will inspire 'em.
It'd be an honor. And I know you'll be a good dad, and you'll get them in the right place.
Right. Yes, sir. Gonna say, um, there anything else you want to share with the people?
No, I mean, you're more than welcome to ask me anything you want. I mean, man, I could do this. We could do this all day if you wanted. Um, but yeah, no, I really can't think of much. I've shared probably the biggest valley. I guess one more, the low point in my life was, this relates. Uh, 2009. This was a huge turning point for me in my faith. I was still pretty much living for the world, just drinking, smoking, doing stuff like that. And um, I had an on and off again relationship with marijuana. And I remember I was getting ready to go watch Mayfield play in a state title game. And I was getting ready to smoke. And I just heard this voice that wasn't a out loud voice. And I was not high at this point. I heard this voice say, if you keep doing this, something bad's going to happen. And so I tried to ignore it and light up, and I heard it again. And I went on and did it anyway. So I go to the game the next day, and while I'm watching my God, a Mayfield football, I'm watching, my idol, absolutely just crush the team in the state championship game. I think it was 55-0. They played Fairview, I think. So 55-0 at halftime. And my brother calls, and he told me that both of my grandparents have been shot and killed in Paris, Tennessee, in a home invasion. And my response was, "This is not funny." Like it's just something you don't believe. And so that's definitely a low point that I wrestled with for a long time, because I felt like in that moment God was showing me that it was my fault that had happened, which is not true. It was God trying to get my attention. But and so a year later, and there are a lot of miraculous things that happen surrounding all of that. And I don't want to get into all of it, but I have a newspaper article on my refrigerator where a year later, on the anniversary of their passing, the veterinary clinic where my grandmother worked, they absolutely loved her. She was a great woman of faith, a huge inspiration in my life. She did a lot of gardening, and she had a lot of rose bushes. Well, when she passed, the people from the veterinary clinic went and got one of her rose bushes and planted it out in front of the veterinary clinic. Well, in the year after her passing, it was an oddly warm day in January, mind you. Oh, no, I'm sorry, not January, December. It was just an oddly warm day, and on the anniversary of her passing, the rose bush bloomed. And so, just those, and there's a lot of, I guess, illustrations that you can take from that story. But the biggest thing for me is like, just God, the way that the Lord shows us that He's present with us, and that He's real and He's active. It takes in the element of belief and faith, because people even in the scriptures would see miraculous things, but then even in the scriptures, it said they went away not believing. Even if they saw one brought back from the dead, they still wouldn't believe. And that started to make a lot of sense. But that was the moment in my life where I took a couple of years off from coaching. My youngest daughter was born, and before I got back, I got asked to come back. I just had a prayer, said, God, if I'm going to do this, it's got to be you first. Like, you have to be at the center of what I'm doing. I want it to be a ministry. I don't want to go back to the guy that was telling players to intentionally try to hurt kids on the other team. It's got to be you first. And so I think he's helped keep me in check on that. And I still have my moments where I fail, but that was definitely the turning point in my life. I've always pretty much been a believer, but seeing God actually work in the world, refusing to believe in coincidences, and just being able to spot God working in my life and helping others realize that He's working in theirs has been the transformation that He's made in me since that moment.
Right. Man, that's it's crazy to think about, man. Yeah, I'm not.
What the enemy meant for evil, He
Yeah,
can turn it into good.
yes, sir. That is a fact. Well, man, I appreciate you for coming on and you know, breaking down your story, you know, opening up. Um, you know that you're welcome back anytime that you want to come back. Um,
Oh man, you just name it. You just name it, and we'll do it. It's an honor getting to know you too, man. Inspirations. You're definitely one of them to me. You know, there's just seen. I don't know extremely well. We haven't got to talk about a lot of the details, but I'm definitely curious to listen going forward. From where you came from and going to Kentucky Christian and kind of beating the odds and getting to a prominent program like Cincinnati, being a Division I football player, and just knowing you and your character and getting a little bit of a glimpse of what you're about. It's very, very inspiring, and it's going to be inspiring to a lot of our players and Aiden and a lot of the people that you're going to impact. And I'm just very thankful that you're recognizing that God has given you that platform, you know, to glorify Him and to put Him first, man. It's pretty awesome to see. Yeah, I was not there when I was your age. That was not me, not even close.
right. That's what everybody says. They're like, you're old. So I'm like, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that, but definitely raised by, you know, some wise people, man. So I appreciate that for sure. That's definitely going to be, you know, one of these episodes. I'll probably reverse roles, have somebody else be the host. I'll be the person answering questions, but um until then, I don't know. We're gonna keep this going. I definitely will be home. I have to, you know, stop by a high school and come holler at you.
Oh man, at any time, you know, we'd love to have you.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it, man.
All right, DT,
Yes,
keep doing what
sir.
you're doing, man.
Yes, sir. This has been the Sit Down with DT, produced by myself. Um, this is a product of One Dream, One Go Media. Um, thank you to Coach Walker, Mr. Walker, for coming through today and, you know, opening up, telling us a little bit of your story, man. So I appreciate you.
You too, man. See you, DT.
Yes, sir.